Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. This Saturday is UFC Vegas 34. The main event is a very important middleweight fight between Cannonier and Kelvin Gastelum. And this is going to be my full breakdown and prediction for that fight. If you guys enjoy these prediction videos, do me a favor, make sure to like the video. It really helps the channel grow. So also, as far as the full fight card for UFC Vegas 34, it leaves a lot to be desired. It's a super compelling main event in Cannonier versus Kelvin Gastelum. But as far as the rest of the card, it really does leave a lot to be desired. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say, I'm so hyped for this fight card. It's a stacked fight card. I know some people will tell you that. But this fight card's just okay. And I love the main event. I love the main event. So to get to my prediction, I'm going to lay out all the details, kind of how I got there. So first off, you have Cannonier, who's 37 years old. You have Kelvin Gastelum, who's 29 years old. Kelvin Gastelum, obviously the much younger fighter. You have Cannonier, who has a 77.5-inch reach. You have Kelvin Gastelum, who has a 71.5-inch reach. So Cannonier has a very lengthy reach advantage, 6-inch reach advantage. And Cannonier is a guy who originally came in the UFC and fought at heavyweight. He was stopped by Sean Jordan at one point in time. He went, I think, 1-1 at heavyweight before finally deciding to move down to light heavyweight, where he didn't have much success there either. He went 2-3, and he decided he was going to move down to middleweight. And when he moved down to middleweight is when he really found the most success of his UFC career. He went on a 3-fight win streak. I'm going to go over his resume in a minute. And eventually, in his last fight, I believe it was October of last year, he fought Robert Whittaker, the former middleweight champion. And this was a fight going into it. We knew that if Cannonier could beat Robert Whittaker, he was easily the number one contender to fight Israel Adesanya next for the middleweight title. And it just didn't work out that way. Robert Whittaker is just so good. And he just outclassed Cannonier for 3 rounds. I think he hurt him multiple times. In the third round, Cannonier fell face down. Robert Whittaker looked for the TKO, but Cannonier survived. And eventually went to decision. Whittaker won by decision. And that was his last fight. So he's 3-1 in his last 4, which isn't bad, but the loss to Whittaker really hurt because he wanted to fight for a title. But Cannonier, if he can pick up an impressive win, just because of, the lack of people in the middleweight division that Israel Adesanya has not fought yet, he could be pretty close to a title shot. Maybe one more win after this, and he could be fighting Israel Adesanya for the title. Maybe even just with an impressive win over Kelvin Gastelum. You have Robert Whittaker fighting Israel Adesanya soon, probably the end of this year or early next year. And if Cannonier gets some impressive wins, 1 or 2, he could be very close to fighting Israel Adesanya just because they've never fought before, where Adesanya has fought pretty much everyone else who has a decent streak within the middleweight division. So Cannonier's style really is to just kick your leg off and just plot forward and look for big power punches and really look for the finish that way. It's not like he's super technical. He's a brawler. He has decent striking defense. His takedown defense is okay. It's not the best. He was taken down by Whittaker. He was taken down by Jack Hermansson. But he's not a guy that's easy to hold down. He finds his way back to his feet, especially up against the cage. And he did that in the Jack Hermansson fight. He did that in the Whittaker fight. So I don't know if Kelvin Gastelum is going to be able to come in there and take Cannonier down and just hold him down and win a fight that way, especially considering Cannonier is a former heavyweight. Meanwhile, Gastelum, I believe, is still undersized for middleweight, but he's had some decent success there. But I think Cannonier is definitely going to have the size advantage in this fight. But Cannonier, if you look over his resume, his best win, in my opinion, I think, was Jack Hermansson. And if you really look over the resume, at light heavyweight, every time he fought a high-quality fighter, he lost. He fought Glover Teixeira, lost. He fought Jan Blachowicz, lost. He fought Dominic Reyes, lost. So it's like every time he had that step up in competition, he lost. Robert Whittaker at middleweight, lost. And even that 3-fight win streak, which again, it was good. It was a 3-fight win streak. He stopped all the guys that he beat on that 3-fight win streak, which is also super impressive. The names just leave a lot to be desired. David Branch is an okay win. Anderson Silva at that point in time, at an advanced age, doesn't mean a whole lot. Again, it showcased his filthy leg kicks because he finished Anderson Silva via TKO leg kick injury. But again, it's Anderson Silva, advanced age. The Jack Hermanson fight, I think, was his best win. He faced a little bit of adversity in that fight. Hermanson got him down, had his back at one point in time. He got up, and eventually, I think it was in the second round, he landed a nasty uppercut. He knocked down Jack Hermanson, then went to TKO him and finished him. Uh, but that being said, people talk about, Cannonier's power, but it's not that touch of death. He's more of a guy that hurts you and then goes in for the TKO. So I'm just not, this resume is not the greatest resume. You look over Kelvin Gastelum, and Kelvin Gastelum is a guy who's 1-4 in his last 5. So that doesn't really sound all that great. But look at the level of competition he's fought in his last 5 fights. Israel Adesanya, the current champion. He hurt Adesanya in that fight. He landed some great strikes in that fight. And in that fight, Adesanya had a massive reach advantage. And Kelvin Gastelum was able to close the distance and land on Adesanya. Hurt him multiple times. It was one of the greatest fights of the year. Just in a phenomenal performance by both guys. And that just really showed me, I've been high on Kelvin Gastelum for a long time. That just showed me that he can be a legit middleweight contender. He can fight for the belt and potentially win the belt in the future. And I know, he hasn't had some great performances since then. But if he can string together a couple decent wins, he can get back in line for that title. It's going to be hard considering the streak he's kind of on right now, even though it's only on a 1-fight losing streak right now. But losing, so many of his last few fights, it's going to take some work to get back to that fight. But I would love to see that Kelvin Gastelum Israel Adesanya rematch. And I know that's a little bit ways off, but fantastic performance by Gastelum in that, even in the loss. Then he fought Darren Till, and I was actually there live for this fight. It was a very close fight. I think it could have went either way. I had Gastelum winning, but again, Darren Till is a great striker, and the fight majority played out on the feet. And Gastelum was able to hold his own, even though I believe he had the reach disadvantage in that fight as well. Then he goes on to fight Jack Hermanson, another opponent in common with Cannonier, other than Whitaker. And he loses to Jack Hermanson. He was on top. He got caught in a heel hook. And it was just, I don't know what to say about that fight. It didn't last very long. It was the first round. It was only like a minute into the first round. Great performance by Jack Hermanson. But just one of those, okay, that sucks for Kelvin Gastelum. He got caught in a heel hook. He should have had better defense there. Then he goes on to beat Ian Heinisch early this year. Decent performance, but he's supposed to beat a guy like Ian Heinisch. No offense to that guy. Then he goes on. He takes a short notice fight against Robert Whitaker. And it wasn't crazy short notice. I believe it was a month. But Paulo Costa was originally supposed to fight Whitaker, and Paulo Costa pulled out for whatever reason, and Kelvin Gastelum stepped in. And even in this fight, Paulo Costa was supposed to fight Jared Cannonier. This wasn't short notice. Paulo Costa pulled out like right after the fight was announced, and then Kelvin Gastelum stepped in. So this guy, Kelvin Gastelum, is just taking the toughest fights that he can find. I mean, listen to some of these names. Adesanya, Till, Hermanson, Whitaker, and now Cannonier. That's crazy level of opposition for Gastelum. And even though he's lost a lot of those fights, he's looked good in some of them as well. And I know you can't elevate a guy off a loss. I'm the first person saying that. But Kelvin Gastelum has some very good skills. And I can't wait to see how this fight plays out against Jared Cannonier. Because in this fight, if you look at Jared Cannonier's strengths, what did I already say? Heavy, filthy leg kicks. And Kelvin Gastelum does not seem to want to check any leg kicks. He's constantly just absorbing them, plotting forward. Sometimes Kelvin Gastelum hangs back, but a lot of the time he's just pressing forward. You look at the Whitaker fight, just pressing forward nonstop. Got clipped up quite a few times in that Whitaker fight, which is funny because that fight was in April, and Cannonier's last fight was October of last year, but they're both coming in off a loss to Robert Whitaker. But Gastelum, majority of the time, just likes plotting forward, really just trying to close the distance, which he does a great job for having a reach disadvantage in a lot of these fights. He closes that distance so fast and so well, and that's just the style that he likes, just to press forward. He does well when he sits back and counters. His hands are fast, but he's more successful, I feel like, and looks better when he's really moving forward. I think that's when he does his best work. And in this fight, that's what makes it so exciting. You have Cannonier, who's going to be pressing forward. You have Kelvin Gastelum, who's most likely going to be pressing forward. And both guys have decent power in their hands. I would give Cannonier the power advantage, but Gastelum has good power too. He knocked out Michael Bisping, who Michael Bisping has a legendary chin. So as far as my prediction and how the fight is going to go down, this is a hard fight to pick, I feel like, because there's so many different, you can give edges to different guys. I feel like Cannonier is going to have the size advantage. I feel like Cannonier has the power advantage. I feel like Gastelum doesn't check those leg kicks, and then Cannonier has some of the best leg kicks in the division. So you can really kind of flop back and forth and say, okay, I could see a path to victory for Jarrett Cannonier. I could see a path to victory for Kelvin Gastelum. But Kelvin Gastelum, I'm going to pick him to win, and I'm going to pick him to win by decision. But I could also see him winning a fourth or fifth round TKO. And the reason I'm going with that is because I just feel like Kelvin Gastelum's able to close the distance. So he's going to be able to deal with that 6-inch reach advantage of Jarrett Cannonier. He's just able, he has very tricky striking, and he just lands on guys. Even in the Robert Whitaker fight, which he got outclassed as well in that fight, he landed some good punches on Whitaker. He just has very tricky striking, and he has a great straight left hand. He has some decent hooks, and his hands are very fast. I think they're almost deceptively fast. I don't know if it's because, he's coming up. He's a smaller middleweight, so he just has the speed advantage on these guys. But he just finds a way to land. I mean, look at the way he was closing the distance on Israel Adesanya and landing and hurting Adesanya. And I just feel like Cannonier is going to get frustrated. I feel like Gastelum can get in and out of range decently. I think Cannonier is going to be getting outstruck, and I think eventually he could get frustrated and walk into a big punch, a big hook, and eventually get finished in the later rounds. But I just think Cannonier's so tough. He's so durable. I think he's going to be able to survive the fight and eventually go to decision. Kelvin Gastelum's going to win. Maybe like a 3 rounds to 2 or 4 rounds to 1. I just feel like, also definitely those leg kicks are going to add up for Cannonier, and I hope that Gastelum comes in with a high fight IQ. He looks to check those kicks, and, he doesn't check very often. And Cannonier, if he lands a couple of those hard leg kicks on you, it's fight changing. It's debilitating. So I think that's a really important, factor for Cannonier to really come out, and he always does. So I have no doubt he'll do it in this fight. Is to chop Kelvin Gastelum's legs, because that'll be able to keep him, from moving in and out as well as he does. But I just think Gastelum's the better striker. I think he's the faster fighter. I think he's the younger fighter, the fresher fighter. I think that he can mix in the grappling. I don't know if he'll be able to take Cannonier down and hold him down. I think he could, if he times him well, I think he can take Cannonier down, but I think Cannonier will be able to pop back up. And I just think that Gastelum's going to win this fight on the feet, really. I don't see him winning by taking Cannonier down and holding him down for long periods of time, because Cannonier is just not a guy that's been able to be controlled, and especially considering Gastelum's looking at a size disadvantage yet again. Cannonier's a massive middleweight, and Kelvin's a very undersized middleweight, so I just don't think that's going to work out for him. I don't think either guy is a crazy submission threat. It's not like Kelvin Gastelum's ever really looking for that many submissions. He has a decent rear naked choke. I think that's possible. But again, I just don't see the fight playing out on the ground all that much. I think if Jarrett Cannonier wins, he lands a big shot and TKOs Kelvin Gastelum. But Kelvin is so durable too. He took that spinning back elbow from Israel Adesanya and just absolutely ate it and kept moving forward. So I just don't. I have a hard time believing that Jarrett Cannonier is going to stop him, and I just don't think Jarrett Cannonier's skill set is built for beating and outclassing a guy for 5 rounds. I just don't think he's going to be able to do that. I think he's going to wear down. I mean, Kelvin Gastelum's shown he has 5-round cardio multiple times, and also I talk about this many of times. You guys, if you guys follow my channel, you've heard me say this. There's guys that start losing fights, whether they get rocked or hurt badly or whatever might happen. And they kind of pack it in. They kind of just wait for the fight to be over or wait for the referee to step in. Kelvin Gastelum is not one of those guys. In the Robert Whitaker fight, he took so much damage and he was hurt multiple times, but he just kept coming forward and he was looking for the finish. That fight was fun. Even though Whitaker won all 5 rounds, Gastelum just pressed forward looking for the finish. So even if Gastelum, let's say he gets hurt early, it's not like that's going to be the end of the fight for him. If he's able to survive, some guys just kind of pack it in and they're scared to let their hands go. Gastelum is not that guy. He will press forward and look for the finish till the very end, and he has the cardio to do it. To take Robert Whittaker to a 5-round decision, that's something to be said for that. Where Cannonier went 3 rounds with Whittaker, and he started to get tired towards the end of the 3rd round. I don't think it's anything game-changing, but I would give Kelvin Gastelum the cardio advantage, and that's just based on what we've seen in the past. So I'm going to go with Kelvin Gastelum by decision. Do me a favor, guys. Comment down below and let me know your prediction. I really appreciate you guys watching the videos. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.